So how about this? We'll get going. I'll ask Kahurangi to introduce herself, talk about her seat, talk about her party's policies. One of you guys, if you can be the timekeeper, and let's give them plenty of time, say 5 minutes to introduce themselves, and then we'll have some questions. Okay?
Kia ora e te whānau, ko ka herangi taku ingoa, no Ngāti Manipoto no Tainui hoki, te whānau waratane ki te taha o taku kāha. O kari o te maunga, ko whaingaroa te moana, ko koe hākena te marae, Tainui te waka. And ki te taha o taku mama, no England, no Wales. Okay. E noho ahau ina nei ki Ōtautahi, rua ngā tamariki. It's my daughter Waiata's 15th birthday today. So I just want to acknowledge my baby. She's my baby and I don't know where those 15 years have gone, honestly. But she's told us what she wants for dinner. She's got all her presents ready, so I'll see her after school today, so that'll be lovely. But always have to acknowledge our rangatahi and our babies, because that's what we do it for, to leave a legacy of abundance that is actually their right. And at the moment, the way Aotearoa, the system is going, we see our Māori people in the worst of the statistics, and we don't have to tell you about that, but just like Matua said, you know, those essential workers were the backbone of our country when we went into lockdown, and it's shameful that some of them were getting paid minimum wage. You know, we're putting themselves in danger, and then we just go back to, oh, they were essential, we love our essential workers. We had like these ads going on, everyone was talking about it, and then come what may, Countdown's got 400 million to rebrand, but do they have enough money to pay their workers a living wage? And we know that a living wage is actually what people need to actually have the basics and the necessities and have time for whānau. So I am standing, so all of a sudden at the end of the last year, I was having a chat to my mate Chloe Swarbrick, and she said, "E hoa, can you please stand for Christchurch Central?" And when Chloe calls, you say yes. So that's how I started my career in politics. And I guess when I talked to my whānau about it and talked to my tamariki, they were like, yeah, mum, whatever. And I was like, well, I want to be the change that I want to see in the world, and I know that I can make an impact. So my background, I grew up in a small farming community in the Waikato, a little town called Te Koete. And we always, my mum really instilled in us a sense of duty, a sense of public service. So whether that was doing some tree planting, picking up rubbish by the river, or going to the local retirement village and playing some really bad piano, whatever it was, and I took that into my working life with me. So I'm an environmentalist, and I worked as the national manager of Parakore. So Parakore is it's an organisation in Raglan who advocate and educate for a world without waste from a Māori worldview. So we worked with over 800 organisations around Aotearoa, kura kaupapa marae, businesses, whānau hapu, because we know that when we empower our people, we remember the greatness that we were born with. So that's why I'm with the Green Party, because the Green Party, everything is based on the care of the planet and our people. And you know, those things aren't separate, right? We are part of nature. Ko Aotearoa, ko te ao ko au, right? We know that innately. It was so wonderful working with Māori all the time, because we didn't have to explain why the whenua is important, why we had to look after our awa, and why we wanted to have our tamariki be able to swim in the moana, but not just them, their tamariki, and every single generation after that. But at the moment in Aotearoa, we only protect less than 1% of our moana. Less than 1%. And we still have parties who are wanting to, and proudly saying that they want to open up exploring oil, and fossil fuels in protected areas. The Green Party completely against that, and what we're wanting to do is by 2050 to have 30% of our moana protected. We're talking about a wealth tax. We're like, us and Pāti Māori are the only ones talking about a wealth tax. We know in Aotearoa that the rich are getting richer and everybody else is just left to fend for themselves. So that is a political decision. Political decisions are made by politicians, and what they're deciding is who gets a big slice of the pie and who's not even allowed a seat at the table. And so what a wealth tax does is it evens the playing field. It makes sure that everyone has access to a warm, safe, dry home. There it is. Free dental, you know, having nutritious food for their tamariki, and I could just go on and on and on, but I can talk about that when we get onto the questions. So now and over to Tracy.
Can we have a special Almighty Paki Paki for Tracy, who I called at 5 o'clock last night and asked her.
Kia ora tātou, call Tracy McKellar home. And when you get a call from Shane, you certainly make sure you pick it up, and when he asks for something, you say yes. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity to have a tūrero with you. I really wanted to just acknowledge what Janice had run us through. It's an impressive amount of work and really, really important idea, and I just think that the PSA should feel pretty proud of everything that's been achieved. Before I was the Member of Parliament for the beautiful Banks Peninsula, which is the best electorate in all the world, I was a union organiser for NZNO, Nurses Organisation, and so I understand what it's like to be out there and what it's like to have to fight for everything and to have to explain everything, and it's hard work. And I think for the PSA in particular, you know, often nurses join because they get their indemnity insurance, and it's not always an active choice to be union. So I always really admire other unions when they know that they have to just work that little bit harder, but get that real active, and to watch the fact that delegates have come up to leadership roles, I think is a testament to how well that you're doing things at the PSA. And I really enjoyed the korero here, and I forgot all of Labour's policies because I was sort of going along with this journey. But I've been out door knocking this morning, and one of the things that strikes me when I'm talking to people on the doors, first of all, it only takes me 2 sentences, and they say, "You're from Southland," and I say, "Yes, I'm still got my arms." Now, I've been here 20 years. My children were 8 and 10 when we moved up here, and they still roll their R's. I think it's just a genetic kind of thing rather than a vernacular. But when I'm talking to people on the doors, there's still so many people that are undecided, which I think is a kind of an interesting vibe. It's not feeling like 2014 for me. It's feeling a little bit more positive, even though the polls aren't so optimistic. And they're undecided, and they're saying, "Look, I'm just really worried about the economy." And I go, "Well, let me tell you about the economy. The economy's actually doing okay. We've turned a corner. Inflation is peaked. It's on the way down. It's happening everywhere in the world, and New Zealand is not special. We're not insulated from what happened post-pandemic. But we kept people employed, we kept people tied to their jobs, we kept businesses tied to their workforce, so that when it was time to open up and get out there again, we could hit the ground running." And that has been working. Wages have grown higher than what inflation has, and that's the important sort of metric, isn't it? And we've got record low unemployment, and when people are working, they're much better insulated against these shocks. And when we think about government debt, government net debt to GDP ratio, it's pretty okay compared to the rest of the world. And some would even argue that we could borrow more to pay for more, and maybe, I've got a lot of sympathy with that, but what we're dealing with is that people get spooked by the headlines, People get spooked by the ads that National are running saying that we're in recession. We were never in a recession. We knew it was a technical thing. We knew it was flatlining but projecting growth. So we have to have these conversations with people on the door, one person at a time, and it's hard work. So we're relying on everybody repeating that as they go around and you know, they go around doing what they do in the world as well. And I talked to this one particular man a little bit further, and he said, yeah, but what about the cost of living? It's like, well, all we can do is offer some measures. We can take GST off fruit and veggies. It's not a huge deal, but people keep asking us to do it. So it's more than just the money. It's about saying, it's something symbolic. It's about saying, when I'm at the supermarket, oh, GST is off fruit and veggies. Maybe I make that healthy choice. Because when people are going through a hard time, it's sometimes when they make the bad choices. So we can do that. We can say to people with young tamariki, you know, 20 hours free ECE extended to 2-year-olds. They can save a family $130 a week. Importantly, I think, is the public transport. You know, keeping it free for people who are under 14, keeping it half price for people who are under 24, and people who have community service cards. Because a lot of older people, it's their socialisation as well, and if they have to think twice about jumping on a bus to go do something that, you know, involves them in some sort of social aspect, that's not good for them. And you know, obviously we need to get more cars off the road. So those measures we can do something about. But this one particular man was still a bit kind of, oh, none of that really impacts me. And I said, but what's at risk? I don't want to see fair pay agreements gone. I don't want to see oil and gas opened up for more further exploration. We need to sell more EVs. We need to do much more in the climate space. And all of these things at risk, let alone the minimum wage being frozen for 3 years, if ACT have any say about it. And I think that's the sort of thing that's going to get people over the line.
As I said, this is Iohui, but I'll open up with a question, and I want to contextualise it to this marae, Ihua. In the 60s, 70s and early 80s, it was a place of manakitanga for trade trainees, and it was a great scheme. It was called Te Tai Tonga. Then when National come in, they dismantled it, and we're just now getting adult apprenticeships back on track.
Yeah.
So the question I have for both of you, starting with you, Tracy, this time around, is what is your policy in terms of giving access to trade training?
And that's a great question, because it is really, really important. So we will be continuing that apprenticeship boost that we started. It's worked incredibly well, and it's had really good outcomes in terms of equity. It's not just your typical person that's taking up apprenticeships. You know, almost, I think 40%, I can't remember the correct numbers, but huge numbers of women were taking up apprenticeships, and huge numbers of people from across all of those other ethnic backgrounds, but importantly, Māori were also taking advantage of what could be really good jobs. Apprenticeships give you the chance to own businesses. It gives you the security of having that trade. And you know, we've been through the stage of young people thinking that you had to go to university to be conceived of as a success, and that's great for the ones that want to do that, but it's not for everybody, and we've got to value, all work is honourable, and we've got to value the trades again.
Yeah, kia ora, thank you.
Oh, we'll just let Katurami finish and then Moto. Yeah.
Oh, ka pai, yeah, well, the Green Party, we're always for workers. We are absolutely for breaking down inequities and making sure that when people want to go study, when they want to go into a trade, anywhere, that they're actually supported to do that, because what we're seeing is people not following their passions. They're not able to, because they actually can't see a pathway where they can study or do a trade and actually afford to provide the necessities for their whānau. You know, back in the rā, before colonisation, the way it was a hapu, a whānau, we would see the tamariki and we'd go, hey, that tamaiti is so good at swimming. They never want to get out of the ocean. Let's put them with those navigators. Let's put them with those fishermen. And they got to learn those skills. if you were good at looking at the stars and staying up all night, if a Pepe stayed up all night, they'd say, oh, we're gonna take you over to Uncle because he knows about the stars. And that was about making sure that the special skills that we were gifted were actually nurtured. And the way that the world works now is, if you go to school and you're not good at maths, but you're really good at reading, they'll say, oh, don't worry about reading so much, do maths, do that thing that you're really bad at doing, and see how that makes you feel. So, you know, that is what we need to go back to, is making sure that when someone has a God-given talent, that we're actually supporting them to do those things. And so, I will wrap up, but basically, at the Green Party, we want to focus on those inequities and make sure that students and trades are able to get the basics. So that's a $385 minimum guaranteed income. That's a pledge to renters, making sure that the home that they're living in is affordable and it's safe and dry. So I'll leave it there. I could go on and on, but
We'll give you an opportunity.
yeah, there'll be more opportunities.
Tōna matua.
Just inquiring whether, your initiatives would enable not only those from rural society, Māori back home and where else we else, but what about Māori and also those that are disadvantaged in urban centres?
Okay.
Your schemes, whether it be a trade training scheme, whether it be a pathway to university or whatever it may be, would allow Māori to enable Māori to be registered in what we understand. In the past, we've been straight recently, council on those that we had cities. And that disappeared. It really indicated those communities, and we're across New Zealand. And because many of us are now urban Māori, our kids still sort of want, or parents and grandparents still want to know their children.
Thank you, matua. Kairani, you go first and then Chase.
Yeah, kei te pai, absolutely. We need to make sure that everybody has access to this support. Like, I know in my life that I have been given support. So we weren't rich. We definitely we didn't have that fiscal support, but I had education. I had amazing mentors around me. I had great teachers, and that support meant that I was able to go through and flourish. And when you don't have access to that support, how are we expecting people to actually self-determine what they're doing, and actually when they can't even afford the rent, that they're in a mouldy home? So absolutely, we need to be looking at our urban centres, because we are urbanised. We know, when I talk to young Māori and Pacific people here in Christchurch, and we talk to them about the struggles that they have, they've got 2-3 jobs just to be able to work, and these are like 20-25-year-olds, and then what they're actually experiencing in the workplace is sometimes overt racism, but sometimes it's just systems that aren't set up to make them feel good about themselves. So absolutely, we want to support our Māori and Pacific who are in urban areas, and everybody, so that everyone has access to the support.
Thank you. Tracy.
And I think that that is so important. It's heartbreaking to hear that we're still having those conversations with people. I think also what you may be meaning, and I don't know if I have an answer for it, is if the trades training, it could be a little bit more structured and targeted, so it's not just access to it like first year free and payment to employers to encourage people, but actually in a structured way, so it creates a bit more of a sense of belonging to something. And I don't think I have an answer, because I'm not sure that we've thought that through. So that is something that's a really good piece of feedback that we can take back and say, hey, because that doesn't even cost anything, really, does it? That's just a different way of doing it to make sure that it's done differently. So thank you for that.
Kia ora. Whaia.
I was watching a debate the other night, and one of the things that sort of struck my thought system was that, okay, so why does it matter?
Fire.
Thinking along the same lines, that's not easy.
Fire. Can I reword the question so relevant to both candidates? And it's simply, what is your party's position on wealth tax? I'll start with you.
So, our party's position is that we don't think it's the right time. And as you'll pick up from the discourse and the korero that's been around that over the last couple of months, we're probably not all on the same page with that. But, but you support what your position is. And I think at the heart of it, it was thought that we didn't feel like we could sell it at the moment. When we're at 40 or 50 in the polls, that might have been a good time to sell a wealth tax. But we had to weigh up, do we think we can sell a wealth tax to people? Because we always get hit about tax. As soon as we mention we're in tax, National just go, Labour's going to tax you. And, we talk to people and it's usually blown out of proportion. Sometimes it's not even wildly or remotely true. So we get hit with the tax thing really, really easily, and we didn't think we'd be able to sell it. And if we couldn't sell it, then we were going to lose things like fair pay agreements, and we were going to lose things like the minimum wage increases. And so it was a way up. I don't know if that was the right thing, but that's the prerogative of our caucus to make that call, and we didn't think that we could do it. Do I think that a wealth tax eventually will come in? Absolutely, but maybe it'll take a strong negotiation and coalition.
Yeah.
Tracy, that's a very honest answer. Thank you.
Well, I'm really proud at the Green Party that we are brave and we are bold and we are saying a wealth tax is what we need. When we look at other countries that other parties look to, they say, look at the transport system in Amsterdam, look at the transport system, or look at the healthcare system in the UK. What do those countries have? They have a wealth tax. And actually, 53% of New Zealanders agree that we need a wealth tax in this country. What I think is shameful is that when people are making more money off a house that they were given from someone who died or given at birth than someone who's out there working 3 jobs. They're making more money off an asset, then something is not right. And we all know about generational wealth. When our land was taken from us, our ability to have our whakapapa stand in our place and also have that generational wealth come down was stripped away from us. And we see the effects of that with whānaus living in damp, overcrowded houses. Thousands of tamariki. Are we happy with thousands of tamariki living in emergency housing? No, we're not. And on the street, fine, absolutely. And are we happy about that? No. So our answer is a wealth tax. And the amazing thing about the Green Party is it's full of all these very brainy people. And so what they've figured out is that 95% of New Zealanders can have more money in their pockets. So we're looking at just taxing that 5%, and we're looking at taxing generational wealth. And what that gives us is a plan to eliminate poverty in our country. That gives us a plan to make sure that everybody has a warm, safe, accessible house that they can afford. And it also means free dental for everybody, which will be paid for by 0.7% of the population. So a wealth tax is coming. We want a wealth tax, and that's why we really need more Green Party MPs, and so that's why we asked for a party vote Green. So you don't have to vote for me personally, but voting a party vote Green means we'll have more Green MPs in Parliament.
You've gone to it in some detail, but I want to extend that question, and if we can just put wealth tax aside, let's talk about the mechanics of how we do this. And the pretext of the question is this, that home ownership amongst working people and Māori in particular is going south. It's been overtaken by the motive of private profit, of housing over public good. So wealth tax aside, tell us about the mechanics in terms of delivering of more home ownership and houses that are warm and safe. Tracy?
It is in housing, if you're remember that not too long ago was sort of delivered to us as the crisis du jour, and I think we've made some pretty good ground on the housing front. But we need to make sure that it's equitable, because it's still too hard for people to get into that first home. What we have done is ensure that we've got programs in place where the government can share some equity to get people into their first home, progressive ownership, where there's different packages where the loans can be organised so that people who probably never would have owned a home are now buying those homes because the government has sort of gone guarantor for them. And it's also about supply. You know, we've built 13,000 public houses since we've been in government, and you know, we know that the previous government didn't do that. And if they had built at the same rate that we're building now for the 9 years that they were in government, we wouldn't have anybody on our wait lists. What is at risk though is that despite the fact that they will say that they're still going to have some public housing, they're just going to do it differently. A house isn't a public house unless it comes with an income rental, an IRR subsidy. Otherwise it's just a house. A low income family can't live in that house unless it comes with that subsidy, and they haven't budgeted any money for that subsidy. So there will be no public housing past 2025, and it just doesn't make sense because, you know, we've come so far.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, kia ora. So the Green Party has a pledge to renters. Okay, so our pledge to renters is that we will make sure that the home that you are renting is fit for renting. So we will have a rental warrant of fitness. That means that landlords have to be on a register. They have to prove that their whare is actually safe for whānau. And we know that if you live in a damp, cold home, then you're going to have poorer health outcomes. And we know as Māori, again, we are listed on those statistics. So we really have to look at our homes and our housing. We also need to make sure that when we have Māori land, that we have got the support to actually build our papakāinga and have that self-determination. And the Green Party will support Māori to have that self-determination, especially on their land, on our land. So the pledge to renters also, like when we look at Christchurch Central where we are now, 59% of people rent. And I was talking to some landlords last week and they're going, yeah, but we're just going to pass the costs on to the renters. And I'm going, that's where our rent controls come in, because that's part of our pledge to renters. But I'm sorry, if you are a landlord and you cannot provide a home that isn't damp, mouldy, then you should get out of that game. It's not about making profits. Well, it is for them, but it's actually about people having a safe and secure place so that they can thrive. And too long has housing been a monopoly for the rich to play a game with people's lives. So, pledge to renters, let's go.
Yes, Maya.
Just adding to that, there's two circumstances just recently where the renters, because of their unhealthy homes, are speaking to the landlords to fix that problem. The landlords in yes, but would have to replace you, which comes under the standard. They did place up, and then they put their rent up by about 110%. They couldn't afford it, so they had to move in with another owner. And you know, that's a gap that needs to be really closed up.
Absolutely.
And with the interest rates going up too, the banks are coming and hiring at the moment, you know, and those people that think about taking mortgages, it's going to be unaffordable. I mean, because National were talking about, you know, bringing in overseas interests again to buy up the houses, which will put us all back to square one again. So if we can work really hard, both parties,
yes,
on closing those gaps. I mean, you know, like, these people are desperate because the three prices are not just
everything. Absolutely.
It's a fair point, Whānau.
Yeah.
I assume Eunice would have heard the term fire at will, all right? Let's remember, folks, what's Act policy in terms of renters? Evict at will. Act's policy in terms of renters is evict at will. A landlord which gives the absolute right with no reason, no time frames to evict tenants at will. That's what we're dealing with. That's their policy.
And let's talk about what happens to those people. So what happens is sometimes they get emergency housing. So that's going into a motel. That is made for 2 weeks max. You know, emergency housing is really good when it's working well. 2 weeks in a motel before you're getting into, or emergency housing before you're getting into a long-term whare, so that you can actually build community, so that you can know your neighbours, so that you can be an active part of your community. What's happening now is people are in emergency houses for years and years and years with no pathway to going into a safe, secure home. That is not okay, and that's why this monopoly that our landlords has to stop. And I would urge you to go and have a look at the Green Party website. So go onto the website, have a look at our pledge to renters, because we really break down how we stop the landlords having that monopoly and making sure that people have access to warm, safe homes.
I'm going to give Tracy another go at it, and I've got a quick. I'll take your question far.
One other thing, and you've just reminded me, when we think of KO have done a brilliant job in building, but it's that thing, that age-old thing that sometimes people get a bit judgy, and there's some stigma, and we come up against these subdivisions where, you know, the community don't want KO houses there, so we're constantly sort of fighting that. But it's about community. So what we thought we'd do was, why don't we put solar on X number of KO houses, so that when they go into a subdivision, they're actually subsidising the community's power, so they come with benefits. Not that they should have to, but that seems to be a way we can get more solar on roofs and actually attach it to something positive. And we're hoping that might kind of just shift the dial a wee bit.
Whāia, tēnā koe.
On the housing, my issue is around whāia houses. When there's only one person in that whare of 4 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, and we've got tamariki and there's emergency housing. And I know a couple of them, I arranged with them to go and ask for a transfer to a smaller home, and make them feel guilty, but they're not perfect because they've been in that house for so many years. When you've got a person with one money and a 4-bedroom home, and she was told that she could stay there.
And that's that balance between, you know, not wanting to, you know, you're wanting to encourage someone to feel like it's their home, versus, and I don't think, I think it's the number of cases of that is much lower than it used to be, because I think KO do quite a good job now of encouraging people to sort of move on. And of course what we're building is a lot more smaller 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom places than they're new, so that kind of entices people sometimes to give up the larger place and go to something that's quite modern. Yeah, but if you come across people like that,
it's a fair point. It's a fair point. Fair point, Whāia. Motua, did you have a question?
The question that we asked,
Okay.
if you were elected, how would you control interest rates and bring them down so we can
Okay.
yeah.
Whakarangi.
Look, this is definitely not my area of expertise, but so I would never profess to know exactly what to do there, but I do know that at the Green Party, what we do is we talk to the experts, we listen to the evidence, and we put the care of the people and the planet first. And like I said before, there are some really brainy people in there, and so the policies that we have, I trust that they will bring those interest rates down, and they will make sure that life is affordable for people.
Because the banks, you know, even though the government says not allowed to come down, but actually the banks are still putting them up, even though there's a reduction, you know, the GP, whatever they call it, is slowly coming down. Australia, which control it actually, are still putting those interest rates up.
Okay,
So,
Tracy.
so I suppose two things. The official cash rate is set by the Reserve Bank, and politicians should not and do not have any say over that. It's thoroughly independent. But what we can do, what we are charged with doing, is getting inflation down, because they only raise those rates to sort of stop the heat in the economy. They want people to spend less. So they raise the rate as a disincentive for people just spending heaps of money. So the key to it is getting inflation down. And to get inflation down, what the government, a responsible government, needs to make sure that any measures that they're doing, any targeting or any money that they're distributing is targeted, temporary, and doesn't overinflate the economy, because that's what actually causes inflation. So I think, when we look at the policies that we have gone into this election for, it is stuff that we can target to certain people, like half-price public transport for specific people, or things that are temporary, like we paid for a fuel excise for a while. We knew we could only do it for 6 months, but we put it out a little bit further, because if it's on there permanently, it runs the risk of increasing inflation, which then, of course, the interest rates go up. And the second thing is we have to protect our only bank that we do own, and that's another thing that's on the chopping block when they're looking at how they're going to pay for their tax policies, and national as well. They have floated sell-off of Kiwi Bank, among many, many other things. And I think that would be a real shame. Jim Anderton fought hard for a long time to try and re-establish us back into the game of having some control over our own banks.
Jim Anderton who lived about 4 streets away.
Oh, really?
Hey, yeah, he did. Matua. Oh. Boo. Kia ora. Okay. Kia ora. Kia ora. Tracy.
The world is a better place when we share the responsibilities, and we should be sharing all of our responsibilities and honouring Tuturiti. It's part of who we are, it's what we are founded on. So, and what I always say to people, which sometimes can get a bit testy when there's people that aren't on the same page as you, and they get scared by the concept of co-governance, is there's nothing to be afraid of. And the state can't keep doing things that are illegal. We've got to start acting in a proper way, otherwise we never ever get to the end of just being bad at it. So, when I look at the Māori Health Authority and Taka Order, and I hear some of the other parties talking about how they'll just assume that back into the health sector, but it'll be fine because they'll still be able to do their job. And I think, no, they won't, because they won't have what it takes to do it properly. And when I think about Three Waters, as I have been this morning, listening to what's happening in Queenstown, ironically, having been there and having been there during a very raucous protest, and I think to myself, gosh, we could have had nice things, but people were just worried about something that they never had to be worried about. But it was weaponised. And I always say to people on the door, ask yourself who's making you feel scared of this, because you are the mark, because there's nothing to be scared of.
Yeah, kia ora. Well, the Green Party is absolutely for co-governance. Look, we need to stop looking at Te Tiriti o Waitangi as if it's this Māori thing that Māori have to deal with. Actually, there was two parties that signed that, right? Te Māori and everybody else. So it is not just a Māori thing, it is something that we all have to understand and implement, because we actually know that things will get better if we did, because this is like a sacred document that was gifted to us by our beautiful minds of our chiefs and our tohunga, who understood about living in harmony with nature, with Papatua and Nukuananginui, living within the natural limits of the world and caring for each other. So what is good for Māori is good for everyone. And I just want to say, when we talk about advisory groups pop up all over the show, right? Like, oh, we've got a Māori advisory group. We've got, you know what you can do with advice when you're a leader? You can just ignore it. So that is why we need co-governance, because you can be having all of these amazing people giving advice. No one listens to it, but they go, oh, we did have an advisory group. We get to tick that box. That is why we actually need to have real partnership and co-governance, and the Green Party is 100% for that.
Can I just say on behalf, we've been going around the motu holding these meetings, I just want to get a message back to, in the Greens case, Marama, in the Labour's case, Willie Jackson and the Nayama Uta, that have been the champions of our people in arguing for our place in Te Treaty and co-governance. I'm 57 years of age, and I've never seen the level of vitriol and racism blatantly that our Māori politicians have had to endure. And we recognise that as Te Iwi Māori, and whether you are a Green supporter or a Red supporter, I think we need to tautoko our Māori leadership that have been very courageous on this issue. Yeah, kia ora.
I think as we learn more about history in schools as well, you know, it won't be long before there'll be a solid generation who
Our kids have got it, eh?
who will look at us and
Our
go, I don't
Yeah.
understand how could we have been like that? And we see that happening.
Koro, Don Brash might not get it, but if he has mokupuna, I reckon they get it. Hey, so, you know, my view is don't worry about those fellas. I think our younger people have got it. Hey, look, time is marching on. We have got you out of the in the heat of the campaign trail, but I do want to take a few more questions, but we cannot have a hui without addressing what I think is the biggest crisis facing us and our mokopuna, and that is that we are now moving from climate warming to climate boiling. Kaharangi, is it too late?
I am an eternal optimist, and absolutely it is not too late. We do have to take bold steps though, right? We do have to really put that mahi in. We do actually have to change the way we're doing things. And let's just talk about two main things, because there's three main factors that we need to do to reduce emissions. One is turning off the pollution tap. So when we look at our emissions in Christchurch, 54% of our emissions come from transport, and then the rest is pretty much made up of agriculture. So let's talk about public transport. When we give people connected communities, they have access to services, they can, if you have something wrong with you, then you are more likely to go and get checked out if you can afford to go to the doctor, and if you can actually access it as well. So that's going to save us before it gets into crisis mode when things are just too far gone. There's so many things to talk about, and I know we've got a limited time, so I just want to say the Climate Commission came out saying that if we significantly invest in public transport, we are going to save $15 billion in health-related costs. So what that means is that if we are preventing illnesses happening, and we know the drivers of poor health, we know their poverty, We know they're living in damp, overcrowded housing. We know it's about drug and alcohol addiction, lack of exercise, and access to healthy food. So if we work on all those preventative measures, which the Green Party has the policies for, then we're going to relieve the healthcare system of all those preventative illnesses. That means shortening wait lists, that means having more access to good public health and making sure that our nurses and our doctors are looked after. So, you know, we don't, as Te Ao Māori, we don't separate ourselves from nature, and I don't think that we can separate social justice from environmental justice. They all work together, and that is why public transport is a really good example of that. It'll drop emissions, but also it has all these benefits in health as well. So it's not too late. We've just really got to go now, and don't be fooled into thinking about like the things that National and ACT have proposed are absolutely getting rid of the Climate Commission. You know, things like this, taking money from climate action to fund tax cuts. Are you kidding me? We actually need to just be brave and bold and follow the science. Amen.
Follow the science, absolutely. And yeah, no, I 100% agree. It's not too late. You know, we can still mitigate. We have to think about adaptation. That's fine. And when we think about mitigation, you know, 1 in 2 new cars are EVs because of the clean car discount. That'll be scrapped. You know, just starting to make a difference, and it'll go. When we think about offshore wind and renewable energy, you know, we've got some of the best talent in the world, and we've got some of the best wind in the world, and there's plenty of places that are eyeing us up to invest in. You know, we can be absolute world leaders in this, not just for ourselves. We can then take that knowledge and that expertise and export that around the world. That is the new industry. This is the high wage, low emission economy that we need to strive for. But of course, the greenest energy is the energy that we don't use. So retrofitting houses, getting solar on houses. The next stage, apart from decarbonising industry, which has been going really, really well, the next stage is household. You know, what do we do to put some solar out there with a decent battery that we can power, and making all of those communities resilient? Because at the end of every road there's a school or a marae. You know, and we know that we can build resilience around that. I think there's lots of opportunities. I know we felt really pessimistic about climate for a long time, but it's starting to feel like we've got a handle on the things that we can do and create opportunities. And whilst primary industry and farming have done a lot of heavy lifting in our economy, no one's going to want to buy our stuff anymore unless we can show that we've made improvements. You know, Nestle is Fonterra's biggest customer. Nestle have said, we're not going to buy anything from anybody who hasn't reduced their emissions by 50% by 2030.
So, simple. Look, I did promise our candidates that we'll have this debate within an hour, just over an hour, and we're well past that mark. It is in the middle of election time. But what we'll do, whānau, is I'll get Benedict to ask the last questions, then I'll ask our candidates just to give a summary for us. Kia ora.
I couldn't help but I'm not sure I agree with this as a good organisation to around climate change, but I get your point. Things. My question is, and Kia ora Benedict, President of PSA, what you've just described around climate change, but also housing and everything, is a Ministry of Green Works. I don't know if you've heard that concept before. Council of Trade Unions recently put out an alternate economic strategy that talks around a green Ministry of Works. Like the old Ministry of Works before my time, but this whole concept of around housing infrastructure and climate change and a public service to run and manage that. And do you know about that? Would you commit to that? Is that part of your policy? It's not a Ministry of Green Party. Yeah, it's a Ministry of Green Works, just to be clear.
Before we got too excited.
Yeah.
I think you're first.
Yeah, I mean, no, I can't tell you that as an individual here. It is a concept that we've heard of, and I think there's a couple of fish hooks in not doing something along those lines. I think as Janice was describing earlier, in the Māori affair, you know, what used to be, and now it's kind of been inculcated into everything does still work, and we run the risk of doing that to the climate as well. If we just kind of make sure it's everybody's responsibility, what's the overarching, heft behind it. So I think it's a really interesting and exciting opportunity.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be going out swatting after this and hearing all about it. And I would love that. And actually, if any of you do have questions, I'm obviously really passionate about this. So you can find my email address on the Green Party website. My phone number might even be there too if you want to put it all further. I'll just read what we've got here. Establish a standalone Ministry of Climate Change with clear direction to create a Te Tiriti-based approach to managing the transition into a zero-carbon, climate-resilient Aotearoa. So, sounds kind of like a green ministry.
Okay, kia ora. Hey, look, we are coming towards the end. What I'd like to do is give you 3 minutes each and to answer this question. Why should I vote for you and or your party? Kia ora, Tracy.
I feel like I'm all talked out, but if I've got 3 minutes left,
Okay, up to.
Okay, why should you vote for me or my party? Let me take that in two parts. I love representing the Banks Peninsula. I think I've done a really good job as a local representative. It's really rewarding when people come to you with specific issues because it's all about problem solving and I love doing that. It can be interesting and varied and no one day is different, is the same as the other day. And I've really enjoyed all of the relationships that you get to build, which I think almost everything that's good in the world comes down to the fact that the relationship is in place and that's when you can do stuff. Why you should vote for Labour? They say that there's only two types of elections. It's time for change. Why put it all at risk? And after every major event in history, it's always been a time for change, and we understand that that's how people are feeling, but we need to be able to say to people, a change to what? Because that is the risk, and now is not the time to put it all at risk. Have we been perfect? Absolutely not. Have we had to deal with things that we never in our wildest dream imagined that we would have to? Absolutely yes. But we still feel that we've got the team in place, the policy in place, the partnerships and the coalition friendships in place to be able to get us to where we need to go.
Kia ora, Tracy.
Yeah, kia ora. I just thank you so much for sitting here on a Friday afternoon and just having so many partai and really, really passionate and invested in the future and leaving that legacy of abundance for our future generations and ourselves as well, hey. Why should you vote for the Green Party? Well, I've heard that some people actually think that the Green Party is like this radical party, this idealistic party. But if we break that down, what are our ideals? Our ideals are caring for the planet, for Papatūānuku, and for our people. Whoa, crazy ideas, yeah. And then the radical part of it, I think, is that we listen to the experts, we listen to the science, and we base all of our policies off evidence, not off fear. And I think that's a really big difference when we're looking at those fear-based politics that are really coming through, man. I've seen some of these ads coming through and I'm like, wow, what's going on? This isn't even true. So why would you vote for the Green Party? Well, we want to see more Green Party MPs in Parliament so that we will hold the government to account for protecting Papatūānuku and people over profits.
You know what scares me about Fiona?
Yes.
Because the way the government's going now, we're selling our land off where we won't see life. And the only land it's going to be is Māori land.
It's just some.
But then the world is going to be worse, and then the Māori will kind of let them on it. And so even when you don't have to sell their land to survive.
Kia ora. Thank you for
It's a scary
That's a good point, and I think a great place to end our kōrero today. Thank you for that whaia. Hey, on our behalf, I want to thank Tracy and Kahurangi for being here. I want us to do something though from here. I want us to go back home. I want us to find 3 people that are unenrolled, get them to enroll and get them to vote. Now remind me, Kahurangi or Tracy, when does voting start?
2nd of October.
2nd of October.
Really soon.
No, I just made that
And
number
remember-
up. I think I'm correct.
And remember, Te whānau, you can enrol right up to election day.
That's right.
All right?
It is so important that we are mobilising our young people and our people to vote.
All right.
Kia ora.
I'm going to namhia kia kaurua. Namhia kia kaurua. I'm going to hand it back now to our kaumata to hand the toki over. Kia ora.